Hi, how are you? Chimpanzees are often seen as fun, silly, and funny, but the truth is that they can be extremely brutal, truly fierce fighters when they want to be. In this video, we're going to explore some of the most deadly and shocking animal attacks ever recorded. This video will remind you that chimpanzees are not creatures to mess with. These are the 13 deadliest chimpanzee attacks ever recorded. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Now, let's get started. Number 1. Jerome and Sandra Harold and Travis, the chimpanzee. Over the years, after their daughter left home, Jerome and Sandra Harold's house in Stamford, Connecticut, grew increasingly quiet and lonely. In search of a way to fill that emotional void, the couple decided to adopt a chimpanzee, an unusual choice, but one that seemed natural to them. They paid $50,000 for a 3-day-old infant chimpanzee who was named Travis, after Sandra's favorite country singer, Travis Tritt. Travis quickly became the center of the household. Raised like a child, he slept in the couple's bed, ate at the table, brushed his teeth, and wore clothes. His intelligence was remarkable. He knew how to operate remote controls, open doors, navigate the computer, and even dress himself. The local community knew him well, and he became a minor celebrity. However, his wild nature never disappeared. In 2003, after being hit with a can of soda, Travis had a breakdown and chased the aggressor. The incident led the state to ban primates over 50 kilograms as pets, but Travis received a special exemption due to his fame. After Jerome's death in 2004, Travis changed. He gained weight, his fur lost its shine, and he became restless. In 2009, after being given tea with Xanax, Travis became agitated. Sandra called her friend Charla Nash for help. When Charla arrived holding Travis's favorite toy, he violently attacked her. Sandra tried to save her friend, but failed. The police arrived, and after being attacked themselves, they shot and killed Travis. Charla survived but suffered severe mutilations. The case shocked the nation and highlighted that no matter how tame an animal may seem, a wild animal remains wild. Number 2. Natasha Lee and Walter, the chimpanzee. Natasha Lee, a 22-year-old animal caretaker, had always harbored an intense and genuine passion for animals since childhood. Her dream of working with living beings, especially the wildest ones, was pursued with dedication and perseverance over the years, until she finally achieved that goal. Among the zoo animals, there was one who held a special place in her heart. Walter, a 10-year-old chimpanzee she had practically raised since birth after his mother's death. The bond between them was not just professional, it was a relationship based on affection, trust, and daily care. Walter defied the common stereotype many people have about chimpanzees, often seen as aggressive and unpredictable animals. He was known for his playful personality, gentle nature, and affectionate demeanor. Zoo visitors loved watching him interact with Natasha, and he was famous for being docile and friendly. Still, Walter was a wild animal with his own instincts and impressive strength aspects Natasha always respected. In the past, Walter had escaped from his enclosure once. Despite that, whenever it happened, he sought Natasha out, showing he placed a unique and deep trust in her. That connection seemed almost human, a special bond that seemed to guarantee both their safety. But as often happens in stories involving wild animals, trust has its limits, and theirs would be tested in the most tragic way. One busy afternoon, full of zoo visitors, Walter escaped his cage again. What could have been just an exploratory escape quickly turned into chaos. Walter began knocking over trash cans, running toward visitors, causing fear and panic. The crowd's frantic attempt to flee only scared Walter more, who seemed more confused and desperate than aggressive. Hearing the commotion, Natasha rushed to the scene, believing her presence and voice could calm the animal she loved so much. She hoped Walter would recognize her and stop the chaos, calmly returning to the safety of his enclosure. But something was deeply wrong at that moment. Walter's eyes, usually full of tenderness and affection, were now filled with fear, confusion, and a primitive instinct beyond control. That gaze, so familiar to Natasha, no longer showed the friend she knew. It was as if Walter had been overtaken by overwhelming fear, triggering an instinctive reaction of defense and aggression. Without warning, Walter violently attacked Natasha. In a swift and brutal move, he knocked her to the ground using his tremendous strength. Stunned, Natasha tried to react but couldn't withstand the chimpanzee's power. The attack was relentless. Walter sank his teeth into her face, tearing skin and causing deep wounds. The horror of the moment was witnessed by many zoo visitors, who froze, unsure how to help, as they watched the shocking and desperate scene unfold. Walter bit, scratched, and repeatedly threw Natasha to the ground in a fury apparently fueled by fear and confusion. Desperate, Natasha screamed Walter's name, begging him to stop, trying to reach him somehow, but it was as if he no longer recognized her. Finally, the zoo team arrived, armed with tranquilizers and equipment to contain Walter. After a tense and difficult struggle, they managed to sedate him and separate him from Natasha, who was unconscious and covered in severe, potentially fatal injuries. She was immediately taken to the hospital, where doctors fought to save her life, performing surgeries and intensive treatments. Due to the severity of the attack and the risk Walter posed to others, the zoo had no choice but to euthanize the chimpanzee shortly after the incident, a painful decision that brought even more sorrow to Natasha, who saw Walter as a friend and companion. Natasha survived the attack, but the physical and emotional scars remained as deep marks of a traumatic episode. Despite all the suffering, she chose to continue working with animals, showing admirable strength and courage. However, the memory of that tragic day, the loss of the trust she had placed in Walter, never left her. The experience transformed her view on the boundary between wild and domesticated, and how delicate the line is between affection and tragedy. Number 3. King Bruno versus Gary, Melvin, and Isa. Realizing the danger, Isa put the car in reverse to try to escape, but Bruno was too fast. The chimpanzee, an imposing figure with wild, intelligent eyes, lunged onto the car's hood with terrifying agility. The air was thick with tension as Bruno began pounding the windshield with brutal force, shattering the glass into 1,000 jagged shards that glinted like daggers in the fading light. Shards flew everywhere, glimmering dangerously around the men as Bruno shoved his massive arm through the broken window. His grip was merciless as he grabbed Melvin's arm, sinking his teeth deep into the flesh with a savage intensity that sent a searing pain shooting through Melvin's body. Panic erupted inside the car. The men's hearts pounded wildly as they scrambled to react. One of them shouted for Isa to accelerate forward, desperation evident in his voice. The car jolted violently, rocking back and forth as Isa slammed the accelerator down. The sudden movement threw Bruno off the hood with a harsh thud, buying the men precious seconds to pull Melvin back inside, his arm bleeding profusely and his face twisted in agony. Despite the terror gripping them, Isa's resolve hardened. With no other options left, he slammed the car forward into the locked gate at the sanctuary's entrance. The impact was thunderous, sending vibrations through their bones and knocking everyone unconscious in the chaos. When Gary slowly regained consciousness, the world was awash in a haze of pain and confusion. His ears caught Melvin's agonized screams piercing through the silence like a cry for help. Bruno had dragged Melvin out of the car, and the other chimpanzees, a wild and unpredictable pack, were now mercilessly attacking him. Gary's heart thundered in his chest as he scrambled for a weapon. Spotting a sturdy piece of wood nearby, he grabbed it with trembling hands and charged toward the primates. The jungle seemed to hold its breath as he raised the makeshift club. Miraculously, Bruno, the alpha, snarled and retreated into the dense foliage, his wild eyes flashing one last warning before disappearing into the shadows. The remaining chimpanzees followed silently, leaving Melvin bruised, battered, but alive. After what felt like an endless wait, a military patrol arrived, alerted by the crash and the desperate cries. They rushed to rescue Melvin and the other survivors, treating wounds and offering reassurances in the chaos of the moment. Isa, however, was nowhere to be found. Days later, search teams discovered the grim truth. Isa had fled into the jungle and was tragically torn apart by the chimpanzees. His fate served as a chilling reminder of the unpredictable dangers lurking in the wilderness. As for Bruno, he was never seen again. Some say he still roams the jungle, a ghostly and terrifying presence, a chilling embodiment of the untamed nature of wildlife, and a stark warning of what happens when humans cross paths with the raw forces of nature. This story of survival and loss echoes beyond its setting, highlighting the fragile balance between humanity and the wild. It raises haunting questions about the limits of control, respect for animal territories, and the primal instincts that still dominate the deepest parts of our world. Number 4. Alexander Crispin and the Bengal tiger. On February 2, 2013, the Suarez Brothers Circus arrived in the small town of Echojoa in Sonora, Mexico, bringing excitement and anticipation to the local community. The main star of the show was Alexander Crispin, a 35-year-old circus performer who had spent his entire life training tigers. Coming from a traditional family of performers, Alexander developed an extraordinary bond with his Bengal tigers, using the brute strength of the animals to create breathtaking performances. That night, the audience was eager for another unforgettable show. Alexander entered the arena with 2 Bengal tigers, and the act began normally. The tigers moved in perfect harmony, following Alexander's commands as they spun on low platforms. The crowd applauded, mesmerized by the grace and power of these majestic felines. But then, suddenly, something went terribly wrong. One of the tigers, weighing around 200 kilograms, stopped in the middle of the performance and, without any warning, lunged at Alexander. The tiger knocked him to the ground as the audience watched in horror. The animal bit down on Alexander's legs and dragged him across the arena. At first, many thought it was part of the act. However, when circus staff rushed to intervene, using metal rods to try to free Alexander, it became clear that this was real and dangerous. Panic swept through the crowd as parents grabbed their children and desperately fled the tent. Meanwhile, the circus team struggled desperately to save Alexander. But the tiger attacked again, biting him in the neck. Finally, they managed to restrain the animal and lock it back in its cage. Alexander, unconscious, was rushed to the nearest hospital, but his injuries were too severe. He died shortly after arriving at the emergency room. News of the attack spread quickly, reigniting debates about the use of wild animals in circuses. Although the Suarez Brothers Circus had all the necessary permits, it faced harsh criticism regarding the risks of such performances. Despite continuing their tour, the tragic event cast a shadow over all subsequent shows, a somber reminder of the thin line between entertainment and tragedy. Number 5. Maximilian and Baby, the Elephant. On June 13, 2015, the quiet town of Bin, Germany, was shaken by an unexpected tragedy. Maximilian, a 65-year-old retired engineer, was following his usual morning routine, walking along the wooded trails behind his house. He was known as a friendly and helpful neighbor who liked to pick up trash during his strolls. That week, a small circus, Circus Luna, had set up in town. The main attraction was a 34-year-old African elephant named Baby. Weighing over 3,000 kilograms and standing more than 3 meters tall, Baby had spent her entire life performing tricks for audiences in the circus. However, her history was not without controversy. A few years earlier, she had accidentally injured a child, demonstrating the immense power she possessed. The night before, after her regular performance, Baby was taken back to her enclosure. However, someone had tampered with the gate, leaving it slightly open. Confused and disoriented, the elephant wandered out and headed toward the nearby forest. The next morning, Maximilian encountered the massive animal during his walk. Baby let out a loud warning trumpet, which startled her even more. In an instant, she rose up and charged at Maximilian, who tried to keep his balance. Baby's gigantic foot came down on him, crushing him instantly. Maximilian died on the spot. Still confused, Baby continued to roam the forest. Circus staff noticed her disappearance and, after hours of searching, managed to find her and bring her back to the circus. Meanwhile, Maximilian's body was found, leaving the town in shock. Investigations revealed that someone had intentionally opened Baby's enclosure gate, but it was never discovered who or why. Some suspect the person intended to free the animal, but their actions had tragic consequences. After the incident, Baby was transferred to a safari park where she lived in a calmer, safer environment, far from the stress of the circus. Number 6. The Tiger Attack on Siegfried and Roy. On October 3, 2003, Las Vegas was in a festive mood as Siegfried and Roy performed their famous magic show at the Mirage. For over 13 years, the duo had dazzled audiences with stunning illusions and the presence of live exotic animals, especially white tigers. That night, Roy Horn took the stage with Manticore, a nearly 400-pound white tiger who had been part of the show for many years. Like the other tigers, Manticore had been raised in captivity and was accustomed to performing. The show began normally, with Roy guiding the tiger through its routine. But everything took a sudden and unexpected turn when Roy brought the microphone close to Manticore. The tiger bit at Roy's sleeve. Roy tried to correct the behavior with a tap on the nose, a usual cue, but instead of backing off, Manticore reacted aggressively, knocking Roy to the ground. For a moment, the audience believed it was all part of the act. But the illusion was shattered when Manticore sank his teeth into Roy's neck and dragged him across the stage. Panic erupted in the theater. Trainers rushed to intervene, using fire extinguishers and shouting commands. But Manticore refused to release his grip. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Manticore let go. Roy was rushed to the hospital. He had suffered a crushed windpipe, a severed jugular vein, and severe spinal injuries. During surgery, Roy went into cardiac arrest multiple times but survived, though he was left with permanent impairments to his speech and mobility. The shocking attack marked the end of the legendary Siegfried and Roy show. Investigations were launched and several theories emerged. Some speculated Roy may have suffered a stroke before the attack. Others pointed to the inherent unpredictability of wild animals. Roy later suggested that Manticore had been trying to protect him, though not everyone agreed with that interpretation. Despite the incident, Siegfried and Roy remained devoted to their animals, and Manticore stayed with them until his death in 2014. Roy passed away in 2020, leaving behind a remarkable legacy of magic, risk, and unforgettable performances. Number 7. St. James Davis and Mo, the chimpanzee. St. James Davis and LaDonna Davis seemed to be living the dream. High school sweethearts from West Covina, California, they shared a deep passion for animals, especially for their pet chimpanzee, Mo. Their journey began with adventure and joy but took a tragic turn over time. St. James, a former NASCAR pilot, valued his freedom and struggled with commitment. In 1966, on the day of his own wedding, he simply didn't show up to the ceremony, choosing instead to spend the day fixing cars. The town's residents were outraged and mocked him publicly. Ashamed, St. James left the country and accepted a job aboard a merchant ship. During his travels, he ended up in Tanzania, where he encountered local hunters who had killed a female chimpanzee, leaving behind an orphaned baby. Unable to bear the thought of leaving the infant behind, he decided to adopt it and named him Mo. Bringing Mo back to the US wasn't easy, but with the help of German missionaries, St. James succeeded in returning to California. LaDonna initially confronted him, but when she saw Mo clinging to him, her anger melted. From that moment on, the three became inseparable. In 1970, St. James and LaDonna finally got married, with Mo acting as the best man, dressed in a tiny tuxedo. Unable to have children, they raised Mo as their own son. He learned to eat at the table, dress himself, and even use sign language. However, raising a wild animal in a human home brought challenges. Over the years, Mo had several aggressive incidents, including biting a visitor and damaging a police car. Eventually, authorities deemed Mo too dangerous to remain in the home and ordered him transferred to a sanctuary. Despite the couple's efforts, they were unable to bring Mo back. He was relocated to Animal Haven Ranch, though St. James and LaDonna continued to visit him regularly. On March 3, 2005, the couple went to celebrate Mo's 39th birthday at the ranch. They brought cake and toys, and Mo was overjoyed to see them. But tragedy struck when two other chimpanzees at the sanctuary escaped and attacked the couple. LaDonna lost a thumb, and St. James was brutally mauled, losing an eye and suffering horrific injuries. A ranch worker had to shoot the chimpanzees to stop the attack. In 2007, Mo mysteriously disappeared from the sanctuary. Despite extensive searches, he was never found. The couple was devastated. Later, St. James expressed just how much he missed their beloved Mo. Number 8. Tiger shark attack caught on camera in Egypt. On June 8, 2023, 23-year-old Vladimir Popov and his father Yuri were living a peaceful life in Egypt after fleeing the threat of mandatory military conscription in Russia. Vladimir worked remotely as an IT consultant, and the two had settled near the calm shores of the Red Sea. They spent their days enjoying the serene waters near the Dream Beach Hotel in Hurghada, a small resort town known for its turquoise waters and white sand beaches. But that peace was shattered on one tragic afternoon when Vladimir decided to go for a swim. As he swam, surrounded by other beachgoers, everything seemed normal until someone screamed and pointed at a dorsal fin slicing through the water's surface. The tranquil setting turned to panic within seconds. Vladimir tried to swim back to shore, but suddenly felt a sharp tug on his leg. Before he could react, a massive tiger shark, just about 6 meters from the sand, attacked. The shark thrashed him violently in the water as horrified onlookers watched from the shore. Despite Vladimir's desperate attempts to fight and swim back, the shark was too strong. He managed to take a few more strokes, but it was too late. The shark returned and grabbed him by the torso, pulling him underwater. For over 2 hours, the shark dragged Vladimir's body through the water as swimmers and hotel staff looked on, helpless. A lifeguard named Muhammad rushed to help, but there was nothing he could do. When the shark finally released the body, authorities were able to capture the animal, a roughly 3-meter-long specimen. Inside, they found remains belonging to Vladimir. Experts believe the shark's aggression may have been linked to rising sea temperatures or previous attacks on tourists. Despite being devastated, Vladimir's father did not express anger toward the Egyptian government. The incident reignited debates about installing protective nets and taking more preventive measures against shark attacks. Number 9. The attack on the grizzly man. Grizzly bears are massive and incredibly powerful creatures, capable of killing with ease. Despite this, bear attacks are relatively rare. They usually occur only when the animal feels threatened or is protecting its cubs, food, or territory. Even so, some people, like Timothy Treadwell, known as the Grizzly Man, chose to get dangerously close to these wild animals. Hi, how are you? Timothy developed a passion for bears during childhood, even keeping a pet squirrel. His fascination eventually led him to Alaska, where he spent 13 years living among wild grizzly bears, studying and documenting their behavior. He even wrote a book about his experiences, highlighting what he believed was a unique connection with the animals. However, his actions raised serious concerns among wildlife experts and the U.S. National Park Service. They warned that Timothy was interfering with the bear's natural behavior and putting his own life at risk. Timothy rejected the criticism, believing the bears would never harm him, that he had earned their trust. He ignored safety precautions, refusing to carry bear spray or install electric fences. In October 2003, Timothy and his girlfriend Amy traveled to Katmai National Park in Alaska. Despite warnings that the bears were preparing for winter and becoming more aggressive, they decided to stay. On October 5th, while setting up a camera, Timothy was attacked by a 28-year-old male bear. Amy shouted for him to play dead, which worked briefly, but the bear returned and dragged Timothy away. Realizing he couldn't be saved, Timothy told Amy to run and save herself. Tragically, she was killed too. The next morning, a pilot found the campsite and saw the bear feeding on human remains. Park rangers arrived, shot the bear, and recovered the couple's bodies. Timothy's tragic end serves as a dark reminder that wild animals, no matter how familiar or trusting they may seem, should never be treated as tame. Number 10. The shark attack on Henri Boris. On Sunday, November 29, 1964, Henri Boris and his friends were excited for a day of ocean adventure. Henri, an experienced underwater photographer and saxophonist in a Melbourne rock band, was known for his bold ideas. That particular Sunday, he and his friends, including his girlfriend, Jill Ratcliffe, set out for Lady Julia Percy Island, a remote volcanic island off the coast of Victoria, famous for housing a massive seal colony. Henri planned to capture stunning images and also try his luck at spearfishing. However, the island was also home to great white sharks, including a massive one known as Big Ben. Despite the warnings, Henri wasn't intimidated. He and his friends arrived at the island and began exploring. While they swam and filmed the seals, everything seemed normal, until suddenly the animals scattered and the ocean became eerily silent. Henri and his friends dove deeper to investigate when Henri was hit by a powerful force. Before he could fully grasp what was happening, he realized he was being attacked by Big Ben, the infamous shark. The shark clamped down on Henri's leg and began thrashing violently. Henri fought with all his strength, but the pain was unbearable. The shark pulled him underwater and Henri struggled to breathe. In a desperate attempt to survive, he managed to reach the surface for air, only to realize that his leg had been torn off. His friends, Fred and Dietra, acted quickly, using their spear guns to fend off the shark, which continued circling and returning. After what felt like an eternity, a dive boat finally arrived and pulled Henri from the water. He was rushed to the hospital, where doctors managed to save his life, despite the massive blood loss. Henri held no grudge against the shark. He understood it was simply acting on natural instinct. Later, he created a documentary about the experience titled Savage Shadow, and continued his work as an underwater photographer, grateful to have survived. Number 11. The fatal lion attack on Islam Shaheen. On November 27, 2016, the lion village in Alexandria, Egypt, was packed with visitors eager to watch the famous lion taming show. Islam Shaheen, a 35-year-old trainer, was one of the main attractions. With over 10 years of experience working with big cats, he had started as a caretaker and eventually became one of the park's top trainers. Islam had a remarkable talent. He could control lions using only a wooden stick, guiding them through impressive tricks. His shows were popular, although the park was known for questionable practices. Many of the animals lived in small, poorly maintained enclosures and were often underfed, raising concerns among animal welfare advocates. Despite these issues, the park remained a popular attraction. That evening, Islam's show featured 3 lions, including a new, strong, and aggressive male lion recently brought in from South Africa. Despite the lion's dangerous reputation, the park included him in the performance, hoping he would adapt. At first, everything seemed normal. The lions obeyed commands and performed their tricks. But suddenly, everything changed. The new lion, who had been standing still, locked eyes on Islam. Without warning, it lunged forward, knocking the trainer to the ground. Its claws tore through Islam's body, and its jaws clamped down around his neck. Chaos erupted as other trainers tried to pull the lion away, but it refused to release him. The audience panicked and fled in fear. Islam was rushed to the hospital, but his injuries were far too severe. 2 days later, he died. His tragic death sparked debate about the safety of wild animal performances and the conditions in which these animals are kept. While some blamed the lion's natural instincts, others pointed to the park's poor environment. Either way, it became painfully clear. No matter how skilled a trainer may be, wild animals are always unpredictable. Number 12. Man breaks into tiger enclosure. The Ningbo Zoo, located in the Yinzhou district in eastern China, is home to over 200 species of animals. Although it offers rides and attractions for families, the zoo's conditions are far from ideal. The enclosures are small, poorly maintained, and the animals are frequently provoked by visitors. This environment set the stage for a tragedy in January 2017, when a man named Mr. Zhang visited the zoo with his family. As they approached the entrance, he and his friend, Mr. Li, decided to enter without paying. Using a nearby tree, they climbed over a 3-meter-high wall and got inside. However, they soon faced a greater challenge, a second wall, even taller, made of metal bars. Ignoring the danger signs, both men climbed that wall too. When they reached the top, they saw 3 tigers below. Mr. Li realized the mistake and tried to climb back, but Mr. Zhang decided to jump straight into the tiger enclosure, believing the animals would remain calm. As soon as Zhang landed, the tigers immediately noticed him and approached. One of them quickly lunged, grabbed Zhang by the head, and dragged him across the enclosure. The attack lasted over an hour, with the tiger relentlessly mauling Mr. Zhang. Horrified spectators screamed as they watched the terrifying scene unfold. Zoo staff tried to stop the attack using fireworks and even a high-pressure water hose, but the tiger wouldn't back down. In the end, the police had to intervene and shot the animal to death. Although still alive at that point, Mr. Zhang was rushed to the hospital, where he was sadly pronounced dead a few hours later. The attack drew attention to the dangers of underestimating wild animals, even when they are in captivity. Zhang's family blamed the zoo for its lack of proper security, arguing that better walls and more surveillance could have prevented the tragedy. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Also, check out other interesting videos that are appearing on your screen right now. I'll see you in the next video. See you next time.